Eve, acclaimed first woman of creation, mother of all life according to the biblical doctrine, might be a repackaged historical figure known and found in the actual historical record. Biblical doctrine teaches us that Eve, the woman created from the rib of Adam, is the sole first woman in creation. What if all of that was a farce? This video explores possible links between an age-long Egyptian queen and the character Eve, mentioned in the biblical story of creation. Will we find a connection between the Queen of Egypt and Eve of the Christian Bible? Over time, the story of Eve and creation has been known to be a significant part of Christian belief and a basis of the religion. Consequently, it became a topic for historians and scholars. With this turn of events, a detailed study has been carried out concerning the biblical story of creation. The result of these studies has eyes on the actual historical record and the people found therein. In Egyptian history, Pharaoh Akhenaten was the 10th ruler of the 18th dynasty. His wife, Nefertiti and Nefertiti, ruled alongside him. Hence, just as the American president and his wife are known as the first man and the first lady, so too were Akhenaten and Nefertiti, the first man and first woman. Therefore, it is pretty understandable that the biblical description of Eve, calling her the first woman, was not wrong, just confusing. Eve, pronounced as Hava. Hava can either mean breath, as in the breath of life, or even life. So the Genesis verse 3:20 is supposed to be read as, "And Adam called his wife's name Life, because she was the mother of life." As Eve was a female who would give birth to the next generation, the sentence seems logical and sensible. According to the biblical story of creation, Adam and Eve were famed for being innocently naked in their paradise, Eden. Residing in the garden would end when Adam and Eve ate of the fruit from the tree in the midst of the garden. Banishment from the garden was the punishment, and they became ashamed of their nakedness and were forced to cover up with fig leaves. What we have is another direct reference to the famous Egyptian royal couple. Surely Nefertiti and Akhenaten did indeed float through their beautiful palaces at Amarna, where there were many gardens, in a state of near nakedness, and each scene of Egyptian history shows the royal couple in their see-through translucent robes or being completely naked. Indeed, this must have caused a bit of a stir in the Egyptian media. Humor me. The gossiping in the streets, too. Imagine the colossal media storm that would break out today if King Charles III were photographed strolling naked through the gardens at Buckingham Palace in England. What a scarring image that would be in the minds of children. However, when Amarna was destroyed and the Egyptian royal couple was forced to flee from their palace, as there is no evidence of their deaths, they must have been forced out into the big world of sailors, farmers, and fishermen. These people wear clothes. Their regular nakedness, which seemed so respectable and perfectly fitting within the royal court at Amarna, would have looked quite indecent in a rural village or town. They would have been embarrassed by this same nakedness, and there would have been nothing else to do except cover said nakedness. The pharaoh and queen would have worn much more than fig leaves to clothe themselves, as the Bible mentions for the biblical characters. With the thought of Eve, what immediately plays into your mind? Betrayal by a snake? Forbidden fruit provided by a snake? Regardless of which it is, a snake is definitely part of that thought. As it is on the popular Nefertiti's bust, a snake is coiled around her head and comes to settle at the front as an interesting emblem on her forehead. Aside from this, depictions of Egyptian history were quite peculiar. The style of Amarna art widened the hips and thighs and elongated skulls. These impressions, the form of the body was considered to be the way the gods looked. Snakes in Egypt represented royalty and divinity. Hence, many Egyptian royal depictions were snake-like. Kepha, roughly translating to mean swollen or puffed up, was a secret nickname the artists and scribes gave to Nefertiti. The nickname Kapha referred to Nefertiti's swollen imagery. biblical Eve was called Hava, which was eventually translated into Greek Ava and then into the English Eve. A much better description of Nefertiti's image at Amarna would be challenging to find, with her bust being the only thing left popularly in museums and re-sculpted worldwide. This has to be the reason that lies behind Hava's, Eve's, biblical name. The word in question is Hava. In Egyptian, Hava is derived to mean snake, Hava meaning swollen and also Kapha meaning naked. This is an interesting way to apply this crafty naked snake imagery to our historical equivalent for Eve. Already the Amarna royalty, Akhenaten and Nefertiti were known to be very shrewd and cunning in their consistent persecution of the old religions of Egypt. Now, nearly all of the Amarna imagery shows the royal couple in translucent robes that render Queen Nefertiti virtually naked and dramatically display her snake-like distended hips and thighs. Also, when in her prominent Rheas cobra emblems, Nefertiti could have been referred to in a demeaning manner as the swollen naked snakes. With this, the Egyptian equivalents for the Eve, Hava, all match the attributes of Nefertiti. She was almost always naked, Hava invariably swollen, Hava and always wearing the snake, Hava emblem, hence her logical nickname was Hava or Eve. This can only translate to mean the ancient woman from the Torah, the naked Hava, Eve, who in reality, according to Egyptian history, ruled over Egypt during the latter part of the 18th dynasty as Queen of Egypt. Ordinary people wouldn't think there would be any connections between the biblical character Eve and the Egyptian queen. Why would a person consider that thought when the biblical doctrine mystifies Eve as the first woman from whom all creation originates? It's necessary to look outside the biblical text that has been translated, like the King James Version. A person is not reading literal text. Yet, through the literal text, you get an understanding not gained from such Bible translations. In addition, learn and understand how names and words have been changed due to translation from one language to another, and consonants can be translated. Aramaic pronunciations for the consonant E in Aramaic can be translated into English as either an E or an A. With this in mind, Aden could easily mean Eden in English. Now, with this being said, can we find similar connections through the same means to connect Adam, the biblical character in the creation story, to a pharaoh of Egypt? Until next time.